Stanley Kubrick spent over a year filming The Shining. He shot some scenes more than 100 times. He made Shelley Duvall perform one scene 127 takes until her hair was falling out in clumps. This was a man who agonized over every frame, and then he left mistakes in the final cut. A typewriter that changes color, a chair that vanishes, a hotel manager who says the previous caretaker murdered two little girls,
killed his family with an axe.
About 8 and 10, in the film that shows us identical twins. Stanley Kubrick doesn't make mistakes. So what are these? That's when I realized, maybe the answer isn't the point. Maybe Kubrick built a machine that manufactures obsession, and the moment you look for its meaning, you become the test subject. This isn't a review, it's a field report from inside the maze. The story of The Shining is a simple one. A family fractured by a father's past violence retreats to an isolated hotel for the winter, seeking a fresh start. Jack wants to write and provide. Wendy wants to heal and protect. Danny just wants to be safe from the unseen horrors he alone can perceive. He wants the world to stop humming at a frequency only he can hear. But this world is not a setting, it's a mechanism. The hotel is not a building, it's a circuit board. It's corridors forming pathways in a larger invisible labyrinth. The lighting, that gold and orange palette that warms before it suffocates, the impossible afternoon glow in windowless hallways. These are not aesthetic choices. They are emotional programming, a rigid grid imposed upon chaotic human behavior, designed to channel that chaos into a predictable tragic output. The characters cease to be people and become functions. Jack is the primary test subject. His inability is a perfect input. Wendy is the witness, her escalating terror a key data point. Danny, with his psychic shining, is the sensor, a delicate instrument picking up the system's malevolent background radiation. Even the child's tricycle is guided by the hotel's design, its wheels tracing a pre-scripted path through cage-like corridors. An innocent activity revealed as a navigational loop through an elegant, inescapable trap. From the beginning of the film, the system is glitching. A typewriter changes color between scenes. Wendy's knife shifts between a left-handed and right-handed grip. These are not production errors. They are simulation breaches, deliberate seams in the mask that the hyper-vigilant mind cannot ignore. But Kubrick didn't just design this mask, he built the moment it slips. The first real glitch wasn't supernatural. It was a simple logistical impossibility, a fracture in the narrative's own internal logic. Manager Stuart Ullman briefs Jack on the hotel's dark history. He explicitly describes the previous caretaker, Charles Grady, as having two little girls about 8 and 10. It's a specific detail presented with bureaucratic casualness. But the visual evidence presented to Danny and the audience is of two identical girls, synchronized in appearance and speech, a symbol of perfect, impossible symmetry. This is not a minor discrepancy, it is a flat contradiction between what we're told and what we're shown. This is the first measurable rapture, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. When the brain encounters contradictory data, it experiences dissonance so uncomfortable, it is compelled to resolve it by finding a pattern. Any pattern that restores order. This is where the labyrinth reveals its true nature. It's not a puzzle with a solution, it is a system that feeds on the act of solving. The image becomes a heretic, a visual fact that rebels against the official spoken account. Kubrick deliberately overrides what the film tells us with a more powerful symbolic truth. He forces us to distrust the film's own logic by breaking it. It creates a quiet vertigo, not fear, but disorientation. The system's reaction to the heretic is to gaslight, to induce doubt. The viewer questions their own memory, wonders if the details matter, but they do. Every system that depends on belief eventually produces its own heretic, and then mobilizes to silence it. The architect of this system is Stanley Kubrick, but his ideological avatar within the story is the Overlook Hotel itself. The hotel is a god with a chilling worldview. It believes that absolute control is a form of care, that aesthetic curation is a substitute for love, and that absorbing individual identities into its own eternal violent pattern is the highest form of safety. Its vice is a mutated virtue, a desire for order so rigid it becomes a suffocating prison, eliminating the mess of free will. The famously impossible geography of the Overlook set, built not for habitation, but for disorienting navigation. The pioneering Steadicam shots that glide with pre-scripted momentum make characters feel like lab rats in a behavioral maze. Tons of artificial snow ensuring the isolation was not just real, but synthetic and absolute, a controlled variable. The Overlook's psychological control over Jack mirrors Kubrick's directorial control over his set, a closed loop where the architect's fears become the fabric of creation. The entire machine runs on a single fuel: belief. The belief of the ghostly participants forever playing their parts in the ballroom. The belief of Jack that his descent is unique rather than cyclical. The belief of the audience that if they just look hard enough, they will be granted access to the secret room. What looks from the outside like omnipotence is often just fear of irrelevance with better lighting. But Kubrick didn't just depict that fear, he documented it. Kubrick didn't just build this machine as a metaphor, he built it as a laboratory. The Shining transcends horror film and becomes a documentary of its own making. The conditions of productions are not separate from the text, they are proof of its thesis. The legendary isolation of the set, the documented psychological strain on the cast, particularly Shelley Duvall, pushed through 127 takes for a single scene. Hundreds of takes used to break down a performer's ego to a raw state. Kubrick was not merely directing a film about a man breaking down in isolation. He was reconstructing the conditions to observe the process firsthand, blurring the line between performance and real psychological breakdown caught on film. It's a brutal process, and one that makes me uncomfortable, because I recognize a piece of myself in the impulse to push too far for a perfect outcome. The way it was made proves what it's all about. The film's message is not believing this, it is you are hardwired to believe something. The Overlook is an atlas of a mind trying to solve its own disillusion. Danny's tricycle tracing the same geometric carpets, going nowhere. Every completed circle feels like progress when you're the one drawing it. I felt that in my own life, mistaken motion for direction. At this point, calling it just a story starts to feel like denial. And once a system feels threatened, denial is always the first response. Denial is exactly what the film received. The initial critical reception was famously hostile. The New York Times labeled the film unconsciously funny and carelessly written. The critics functioned like Lloyd the bartender, serving the audience the drink they expected, a familiar framework that turned a terrifying, systemic exposure into a sterile debate about pacing and tone. But the most effective neutralization isn't censorship, it's celebration on the wrong terms. The film gets called a masterpiece of horror. Praise becomes a burial. The most potent readings, those connecting it to historical trauma or the mechanics of systemic power, are instantly dismissed as conspiracy theories or overthinking. We criminalize the act of looking too closely. At what point does too much analysis just mean too close to something we'd rather not name? We do to ourselves what the system did to this film. The cultural apparatus hits back, not by banning the film, but by convincing us the game is winnable, ensuring we never stop playing. Back inside the Overlook, the system is preparing to run its final diagnostic. The climax of The Shining is not a battle between Jack and his family. It's the hotel executing its last sequence of tests, confirming the subject is fully integrated before archiving him. When Jack enters room 237, the system reveals its most essential technique: seduction before destruction. Watch the scene again. The woman rises from the bath. Jack moves towards her. They embrace. And then, in the mirror, he sees what he's holding: green flesh, peeling skin, a laughing corpse. Here's what Kubrick understood: Jack doesn't let go. He sees the rot, but he keeps holding on. The beautiful woman becomes the corpse. Desires becomes rot. Fantasy becomes decay. And still, he doesn't leave. This is the moment Jack stops questioning the hotel and starts obeying it. I see this not as a supernatural possession, but as the point of no return in a psychological breakdown, where the mind's own defenses turn into its jailers. The gold room completes the conversion. Lloyd offers him alcohol, the first variable removed, a comforting lie. Grady offers him purpose, the second variable removed, a grand narrative for his rage. By the time Jack stands in the red bathroom, he is no longer a man unraveling. He is a man being calibrated. His humanity is being systematically replaced by the hotel's programming. When Jack lifts the axe, it's not human rage. It is the algorithm executing the next line of code. The violence is impersonal, a function of the system. Wendy's discovery of the all-work and no-play manuscript is not a reveal of madness, it's the reveal of replication. The Overlook has copied itself onto Jack line by line until his mind mirrors its looping architecture. His creative potential has been entirely replaced by recursive, empty pattern. And then the hedge maze, the purest image of the system's purpose. This is the moment I realized the maze wasn't built for Jack, it was built for us. Jack doesn't chase Danny. Jack chases the idea of completing the story the maze has written for him. Danny does not run to escape Jack, Danny runs to escape the loop itself. When Jack freezes at the center of the maze, it's not failure, it's completion. The experiment has resolved. The subject has collapsed into the perfect static state. Preserved, aesthetic, obedient, eternal. And when his face appears in the July 4th photo, it's not a twist ending, it is the system archiving its data. Jack Torrance is no longer a person. He is a specimen in the Overlook's eternal collection. If this is the system's truth, what is ours? What does an Overlook look like when it doesn't need walls anymore? I closed my laptop after rewatching the film and opened my phone, and I realized I hadn't left the hotel. But here's what no one said. Every person in that documentary was doing exactly what the internet now trains us to do. Connect dots, find patterns, build meaning from chaos. They weren't crazy, they were early. The Overlook is a physical spatial algorithm. The internet is its global successor, a network that reshapes itself based on your demonstrated fears, biases, and desires. A maze with no exit, only infinite corridors. The feed shines before you do. It anticipates your psychic movements before you're conscious of them. It learns the ghost you're becoming before you become it. The infinite scroll is the direct descendant of the Overlook's hedge maze, a path with no center and no exit, engineered for navigation without arrival. The feed doesn't care what you believe, it only cares that you keep scrolling. We keep returning to this film because we sense we are now all living inside invisible structures we were never given the tools to see. Are we inventing meaning, or are we finally noticing it? So here's the unbearable truth that Kubrick's experiment forces into view. There is no director, no cosmic Kubrick ensuring thematic payoff or narrative justice. The systems of power in our world are real, and they are not omnipotent gods. The universe is mostly indifferent to our stories. There's no guaranteed script. Our lives are not structured for a satisfying third act. They do not owe us coherent themes. They are frequently messy, often unjust, and they rarely pay off. That realization is not initially liberating. It's a profound and dizzying vertigo. Kubrick's film is not a riddle to be solved. It's a psychological vaccine, controlled exposure therapy for the meaning-addicted mind. It works by making you stare at the impossible geometry until your pattern-seeking machinery exhausts itself. This is why those so-called mistakes mattered from the beginning, why those girls in the hallway mattered. They were not clues to a solution, they were the substance of the cure. The freedom the film points towards is the film to relinquish the role of caretaker, to stop tending to the haunted hotel of a curated identity, a rigid belief system, a demand for a perfectly structured life. And so the film offers the only mercy it can. Wendy and Danny escape. They don't defeat the hotel. They don't decipher its secrets. They don't even understand it. They simply survive. But here's what I missed for years. Danny escapes by walking backward in his own footprints. He unmakes his path. He doesn't solve the maze, he erases himself from it. That's the image I can't shake. The only way out is to stop leaving a trail for the system to follow. In the final photograph, Jack is frozen at the Overlook's 1921 July ball, perfectly composed, aesthetically flawless, and utterly damned. The darkness outside that frame isn't malevolent. It's neutral. It's pure, unscripted potential. The blank page is the only honest space. And if you're here, you're already out. If this video made you think differently about the maze you're in, please subscribe. I make essays about the systems we live inside and the stories we tell ourselves to survive them. Until next time, take care of yourself.